Good morning, Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. Welcome to VBW News. I am Eliza Joylabi, your anchor.
And I'm Manny Celestino, bringing you the real and controversial business news around the Philippines.
The Senate adopted and ratified Wednesday the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the bill seeking to lift quantitative restriction on rice and allow private traders to import the commodity from countries of their choice. Here are the details from Ditala Mapala.
Good day. Under the reconciled bill, the private sector will be allowed to import rice as long as they have secured a phytosanitary permit from the Bureau of Plant Industry and pay the 35% tariff for shipments from neighbors in Southeast Asia. It will earmark 10 billion pesos for the Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund, of which 5 billion pesos will be allocated to farm mechanization and 3 billion pesos to seedlings. The fund intends to ensure that rice imports won't drown out the agriculture sector and rob farmers of their livelihood. Senator Cynthia Villar, Committee on Agriculture and Food Chairperson, said the mechanization fund will provide cooperatives and farmers groups with tractors, transplanters, harvesters, dryers, and milling equipment. The goal is to improve farmers' yield per hectare and facilitate the flow of their produce to the markets. The bill also mandates the National Food Authority to buy rice from local farmers. This is Jutela Mapalad from VBW News reporting. Back to studio.
For the second time on Wednesday, the Senate ratified the Cocoa Levy Fund bill. Senator Cynthia Villar, chair of the Senate Committee on Agriculture and Food, presented to the plenary the new Bicameral Conference Committee report on the bill. May we hear from John Angelo Silverio for this news.
Good day. No senator objected when the motion to ratify the measure was made on the floor. The bill has been ratified by the vote of the Senate and the House of Representatives and submitted to the President Rodrigo Duterte for signature. But Congress decided to recall the measure to avert a possible veto by the President Rodrigo Duterte. Senate Majority Leader Juan Miguel Zubiri earlier explained that they had to recall the measure because of two main issues: the composition of council that will manage the Cocoa Levy Fund and the lack of the sunset provision for the 10 billion pesos funding for coconut farmers. When ratified by the both chamber, the new BICAM report on the bill will be transmitted to the President again for signature. Hindi maayos kung lahat. We fix all the issue. Villar earlier told reporters when the BICAM approved the second version of the measure. This is John Angelo Silverio from VBW News reporting. Back to studio.
Development partners and multilateral lenders have pledged a total of 35.1 billion on financial support for the rehabilitation and reconstruction of War Town, Marawi City. Here's Jutela for reporting.
Good day. During the pledging session held in Davao City on Wednesday, the following countries and institutions committed 32.7 billion pesos in concessional financing on top of 2.4 billion pesos in grants: China, Japan, Spain, Asian Development Bank, World Bank, and International Fund for Agricultural Development. Meanwhile, Australia, China, Germany, Japan, South Korea, Spain, US, ADB, WB, as well as the United Nations will extend technical assistance to implement the Bangon Marawi Comprehensive Rehabilitation and Recovery Program in areas outside Ground Zero, the Department of Finance said in a statement. Also, DOF Secretary Carlos G. Domingo III acknowledged the earlier relief and humanitarian grant assistance worth 6.9 billion pesos that came from the UN and its agencies, Australia, Italy, Japan, South Korea, and US. This is Jutela Mapalad from VBW News reporting. Back to studio.
The Philippines has reaped some economic gains from its improved relations with China in the last 2 years, suggesting that the country is better off dealing with a good neighbor than a distant cousin. Let's hear from Mark Jan for the details.
This is according to New York-based think tank Global Source, which said that while critics might describe the progress as too little too slow, there had been advances for the Philippines on the economic front since the rekindling of its diplomatic ties with China. For now, the present highly popularity, which will not be challenged in next year's midterm elections, means Mr. Duterte, would probably get his way in dealing with China. China, on the other hand, has found in President Duterte a like-minded ally to whom it could open its doors wider to the Philippines through more trade, investments, and people-to-people linkages. Will this friendship between the two nations stand the test of time? That is certainly the hope, said a research note dated November 22, written by Global Source economists Romeo Bernardo and Marie-Christine Tang. With their renewed friendship with China, Global Source noted that Chinese tourists were arriving in droves, almost doubling from 490,000 in 2015, at the height of the diplomatic chill, to close to 970,000 in 2017. This year, arrivals from the mainland have reached 870,000 in the first 8 months, ranking second only to South Korea, and are expected to reach 1 million by year-end, the research noted. Philippine-China bilateral trade has also expanded by almost 45% between 2015 and 2017, from $17.6 billion to $25.5 billion, and by another 16% in the first half. Not continuing supply chain trade that passes through the third countries. Global sources noted that this had turned China into the country's largest trading partner, accounting for more than 15% of the total trade. In this, China is of course as much a winner as the Philippines, evident in annual import growth over 20%, far outpacing export growth. Global Source said that, noting the 14% compounded annual growth from 2015 to 2017 and the 8% growth in the first half of this year. However, Global Source also cited concerns that some of the funds were being invested in the gaming industry, whose sustainability was still under question. Another concern was that the Chinese funds may be helping to fuel a real estate bubble, especially with the increasing number of Chinese nationals entering and working in the Philippines. As to China's multi-billion infrastructure commitments, the research noted that only two grant finance bridges valued at $112 million had started construction, while one loan agreement for an $82 million irrigation project had been signed. Here sentiments are mixed. One side criticizing the slow pace of implementation, the other side relieved that the slow pace, seeing how other countries have fallen under China's supposed debt trap diplomacy. Global Source said, "This is Mark Jan B. sa aking from BVW News reporting. Back to studio.
Inflation likely slowed to a range of 5.8 to 6.6% in November, slowing from the previous 2 months, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas think tank said Thursday. Mary Lourdes has the news.
Good day. Falling oil prices, the normalization of rice supply, and the strengthening of the peso against the dollar caused price spikes to slow. The BSP's Department of Economic Research said, higher jeep and bus fares and an increase in power rates will partly offset slower inflation in other commodities, it said. Moving forward, the BSP will remain watchful of economic and financial developments to ensure the achievement of its primary mandate of price stability, conducive to balanced and sustainable economic growth, the think tank said in a statement. November inflation data is due out on December 7. Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez said Wednesday inflation would taper off towards the end of the year after holding at 6.7% in September and October. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas hinked the benchmark borrowing rate by a cumulative 1.75 percentage points this year in the face of rising prices. During its last policy meeting earlier this month, it lowered its inflation forecast for 2019. This is Mary Lourdes Herman from VBW News reporting. Back to studio.
The Philippine real estate sector is ending 2018 on a bright note. This is an incentive for property developers to gain more traction because of rising demand. Here are the details from Gitelos.
Good day. According to data from real estate service provider Santos Knight Frank, there is robust demand for commercial and residential spaces. Overall vacancy is on the decline despite a number of new projects. Overall office vacancy rate in Metro Manila improved from 4.5% in the second quarter to 4% in the next quarter. This means that the pressure is there for developers to catch up with the rising demand for commercial spaces. Chinese nationals are among the bullish investors. New entrants have taken up as much as 170,000 square meter in the first 9 months of this year. This is around a third of Metro Manila's annual demand, and Chinese interest on real estate may further rise brought about by Chinese President Xi Jinping's state visit. The residential market posted a stellar third quarter performance with 95% of the 230,946 total units sold. Santos Knight Frank Chairman and CEO Rick Santos says the country's workforce and strategic location are ideal for the property sector and things could further level up with better infrastructure. Whether it's road or rail or schools or airports, the more you invest in infrastructures, the more you build, like the Build program of President Duterte. Infrastructures means growth. It means projects. It means expansion of real estate. It means job, and it means progress. Among the office market growth drivers in the business process outsourcing sector, next year will be no different, with the fast-growing BPO sector seen to expand to regions that have good infrastructure and a sizable workforce. The region are taking up the slack over Metro Manila's poor infrastructure that is causing congestion and the high property prices in central businesses. Investors and developers are looking to Metro Cebu, Davao, and Iloilo as alternative locations. Others find way to cope with infrastructure bottlenecks by adopting co-workers and co-living spaces. There has been rising adaptively to flexible workspaces. Studies how his setup results in happiness at work and higher productivity. Knight Frank, head of Global Occuper Research, Lee Elliott, says foreign businesses look at a number of factors in deciding on where to locate. According to Elliott, the first thing is demographics and people. There has to be a resource base in terms of quantum and quality of skills to drive the business forward. Investors also look at real estate cost and where they are in the overall cost base. So considerations include labor, cost, tax, and quality of life. It seems the bubble is far from bursting for the Philippine real estate sector. It is still a cash cow for investors who are finding innovative ways to meet rising demand. This is Gisela Mapalad from VBW News reporting. Back to studio.
Bureau of Internal Revenue has deleted the provision imposing a tax on health premium paid by employers for their employees' health score. John Angelo has the news.
Good day. The BIR issued the order after reviewing Revenue Memorandum Circular RMC 50/2018, which states that health card premium are included in the computation of the 90,000 pesos tax-free privilege on employee benefits and bonuses. Issuing RMC number 9628 on Monday, BIR Commissioner Cesar Dulay said the implementation of the pertinent provision under RMC number 50/2018 relative to the group health insurance premium and director's fee, which were not affected by the provision of the train law, are hereby deleted from RMC 50/2018. The BIR, the order after Senator Sonny Angara, chair of the Senate Committee on Ways and Means, insisted that the circular had no basis as it was provided for under Republic Act No. 1096-3 or the Tax Reform for Acceleration and Inclusion Train Law. The senator also said that only Congress and not the BIR had the power to impose the tax. RMC 50/2018 was issued last May 11 to clarify certain provision of Revenue Regulation 8/2018 and 11/2018, which were issued to implement the train law's income tax provision. Item number 7 of the RMC provide that premium on health card paid the employer for all employees where rank and file or managerial, supervisory, under a group insurance shall be included as part of the other benefit of these employees, which are subject to the 90,000 pesos threshold. This is John Angelo Silverio from VBW News, reporting back to studio.
The country's problematic inflation rate may have finally reached an inflation point this month, with the central bank expecting a slowdown in the pace of increasing in the prices of basic goods and commodities. Here's John Mark for reporting.
Good day everyone. In a statement, economists of Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas said consumer price index for the month of November will likely settle within the 5.8 to 6.6% range after being on a steady uptrend for most of 2018. The deceleration of inflation for the month could be attributed to the sharp decline in petroleum prices, the normalization of supply conditions in rice and other agricultural commodities, and the peso appreciation. The central bank economist said. Latest official inflation rate from the government stands at 6.6% in October, unchanged from the previous month's level, a development viewed by some observers as the beginning of a reversal that will restore the pace of consumer price hike to normalcy by next year. The BSP economists warned, however, that some factors could still conspire to keep inflation elevated over the near term. The recent downtrend in the prices of rice and crude oil, they said, could be offset in part by the adjustments in jeepney and bus fares, as well as higher electricity rates in areas serviced by the Manila Electric Corporation, the country's largest power distributor. This is Marjan Bisakin from BBW News reporting. Back to studio.
Good day. Hindi pa bumababa yung presyo ng mga bilihin. Bumaba na ba? In fact, if you go to the markets now, ang sasabihin ng mga tao, tumaas pa. So why are we suspending? Why are we pushing through with an increase habang klaro naman na hindi pa naman nararamdaman ng mga tao yung pagbaba ng mga presyo ng bilihin? Opposition Senator Bam Aquino said. Officials vow to suspend excise tax if oil prices go too high again. If the 3-month average price of Dubai crude oil hits $80 per barrel, as required by the tax reform for acceleration and inclusion law. But Aquino says it's better to be safe than sorry. He is appealing to both chambers of Congress to adopt the joint resolution filed by opposition senators stopping the increases. In a few months, baka tumaas na naman po ulit. It's very volatile. Kaya it's a better policy na wag mong gagalawin yung mga bagay na wala ka namang kontrol, Aquino said. Meanwhile, Senate Ways and Means Committee Chair Sani Angara said he has yet to receive information on mitigating measures against inflation, like the unconditional cash transfer for the poorest of the poor and fuel subsidy for jeepney drivers for the Pantawid Pasada program. However, the Malacanang said the recommendation is still subject for discussion in next Tuesday's cabinet meeting. We cannot limit this issue in a purely economic perspective. We note the sentiments of the Filipino consumers, and the President will certainly weigh in the social cost involved. Due regard, however, must also be given to the dictates stipulated under the law, which only the Congress can modify, Presidential spokesperson Salvador Panelo said. But even now, jeepney drivers are already decrying the added fuel excise tax. May hirapan din kami. Tulad ngayon, na hirap na nga sa biyahe na minsan nga nauuwi pa namin, konti na lang. Nilo Morales said. This is Jutela Mapalad from VPW News reporting. Back to studio.
President Duterte will look into the recommendation of the government's economic managers to push through with the scheduled increase in oil excise taxes next year, Malacanang said Friday. May we hear from Jutela for this news.
Good day, everyone. I urge President Rodrigo Duterte to still push through with the suspension of the second tranche of the excise tax on petroleum products, despite the recommendation of his economic managers to cancel the suspension, Gatchalian said in the statement issued on Saturday. Gatchalian made the statement in after Finance Secretary Carlos G. Dominguez III revealed that the Development Budget Coordination Committee was planning to recommend to Malacanang to push through with the 2 pesos per liter fuel tax excise tax hike in January due to easing prices of international crude. This is Mark Jan Bisaking from BBW News reporting. Back to studio.
Petron Corporation and Solane announced on Friday a big-time rollback in the price of their LPG products effective December 1. Mary Lourdes has the news.
Good day. The recent widening of current account deficits has overshadowed the near-term economic outlook of Indonesia, India, and the Philippines. Reza Siregar, head of the IIF's Asian and India Research, said in the October 31 report titled Economic Update, ASEAN and India Current Account Challenges. The Philippines' goods trade deficit rose to 15.6% of GDP or gross domestic product in the second quarter of 2018, the highest in the post-global financial crisis period, the IIF noted. Across the three aforementioned countries, the IIF projected their respective current account deficits to be within the range of 2.1 to 2.5% of GDP next year. At end September, the year-to-date trade-in goods deficit stood at $29.9 billion. In the case of the Philippines, India, and Indonesia, the IIF said, the performance of merchandise trade has been the primary contributor to changes in current account balances for these three countries, citing that the correlations between quarterly movements of goods balances and current accounts between the first quarter of 2010 and the second quarter of 2018 are all well above 90%. This is Mary Lourdes Herman from VBW News reporting. Back to studio.
The DOLE said over 1,000 jobs will be available for persons with disabilities in a job on Wednesday, December 5 in Quezon City. Mary Lourdes has the news.
Good day. Hundreds of jobs in business process outsourcing, electronics, advertising, hotel, health and wellness, travel, media, logistics, manpower and security services, sales, property management, pharmaceutical, memorial services, and other fields will be available, DOLE said. The event will be held at the cover walk of the Quezon City Hall. The Department of Trade and Industry and the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority will also provide livelihood and skills training during the event. PWDs who want to pre-qualify for available positions or employers who wish to participate in the job fair may register at fieldjobnet.gov.ph, DOLE said. This is Mary Lourdes Herman from VBW News reporting. Back to studio.
Despite high inflation and a weak peso, the Home Development Mutual Fund or the Pag-ibig Fund is confident it can still maintain the low interest rates it offers for home and cash loans. We hear from John Angelo Silverio for this news.
Good day. Eduardo Del Rosario, Chairperson of Housing and Urban Development Coordinating Council, HUDCC, and Pag-ibig Fund Board, said Pag-ibig's strong financial performance would enable to fund to keep its low interest rate. Pag-ibig Fund currently offers an interest rate of 3% per annum for loans up to 580,000 pesos. under the Affordable Housing Program rates for loans up to 6 million pesos under the fund's regular housing loan program carry an interest rate of 5.375% per annum. Meanwhile, short-term loans or cash loans program known as multiple purpose loan and camelity loan comes with rates of 10.5% per annum and 5.95% per annum respectively. This is the ultimate win-win situation because our borrowers are treated to one of the lowest, if not the lowest, rate in this market. The low rates fuel demand, which turn help improve our net income, Moti said. And when our net income is high, all Pag-ibig members can expect to benefit from dividend payouts, which are much higher than what they earn from other financial situations. He added, the Pag-ibig chief said the dividend rate for 2018 is projected to settle between 6.5% and 7%. This is John Angelo Silverio from VBW News reporting. Back to studio.
The Senate has ratified the Bicameral Conference Committee report on a bill raising the BSP capitalization to 200 billion from 50 billion peso and expanding its regulatory powers. Here's Jutella for the news.
The bill, which was approved last Wednesday, will allow the BSP to authorize, regulate, and examine entities or persons engaged in money service businesses. It will also have expanded powers to impose administrative and criminal sanctions. It can forfeit profits from unauthorized financial transactions. The central bank can also impose sanctions on transfers and acquisitions of substantial shares of banks and quasi-banks without its approval. The BSP is also given regulatory powers over other categories of financial institutions and will have fully flexibility to conduct risk-based supervision of financial institutions. Undoubtedly, there is a need to respond to contemporary challenges in order that the BSP shall remain effective in its conduct of monetary policy and supervision of entities within the financial system. Senator Francis Escudero, Chair of the Senate Committee of Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies. This is Jutala Mapalad from VPW News reporting. Back to studio.
Philippine consumer inflation likely eased in November for the first time in almost a year, coming off its highest rate in almost decades due to declining fuel and rice prices and a stronger peso, a Reuters poll showed. Ditella has the news.
Good day. The median forecast of 11 analysts was for the Consumer Price Index in November to rise 6.2% from a year earlier, slowing from 6.7% in September and October, a near 10-year high. Analysis November forecast ranged from 5.9% to 6.5%, while the central bank projected inflation to come in around 5.8 to 6.6%. Only 3 of 11 analysts had forecast for November core inflation stayed steady at 4.9%. Some analysts said easing inflation should give the central bank room to pause at its December 13 policy meeting after rising interest rates by a total 175 basis points at 5 consecutive meetings. Following the rate hikes, the central bank has forecast average inflation of 3.5% next year, within its 2% target range, easing from its projected average this year of 5.3% outside the same target range. This is Jutala Mapalad from VBW News reporting. Back to studio.
Surprise kaya natin. Dapat sweet, dapat kakaiba.
Nakita ko na yan. Nakita ko na yan.
Ito, hindi mo pa nakita.
Nescafe Creamy White?
Bago taste nito, better na.
Milkier ah.
More Nestle milk eh.
Nakaka-inlove naman. Itong kape.
Pag kailangan ng gamot, huwag mahihiyang magtanong. Kung may right med ba nito? May right med ba nito? Pag may kailangan gamot, huwag mahiyang magtanong. Kung may right med ba nito? Ang right med ay premium na gamot na kayang bilhin. Dahil gusto namin na gumaling kayo.
Sinabon mo, ngunit kulang.
Bakit ganon? Sinabon ko naman! Ayaw kuminis! Girl, tama ng drama. After washing your face, use Eskinol. It cleans deep to help remove pimples, blackheads, and whiteheads. Ang linis nga! That's why it's makinis. Linis, kinis! Eskinol cleans deep for linis, kinis skin.
Isang araw, punta ako sa tindahan ni Aling Nena para bumili ng suka. Natulala ako, laglag ang puso ko, nalaglag din ang sukang hawak ko. Tindahan ni Aling Nena, astig ngayon dahil may Sun Express load na. Mura na may libreng text pa, kahit mapiso-piso. Cellphone ko ngayon ay super loaded na. Bilis mo naman!
Express eh.
Baby ka pa para dyan. Pero game na po ako dyan. Lucky me sweet and spicy. Medyo spicy to, ha? Medyo sweet naman po, ma. There's a girl I really love. Sino? You.
Lucky Me, how sweet and spicy.
Game na ako dito, baby!
Ano to?
Ano kaya yun? Basketball!
O ito.
Chicken Jollibee! Dito ako, Jollibee tayo.
Jollibee Chicken Joy. Crispy ang balat, delicious. Juicy ang laman.
Just delicious! Dito ako, ano ito?
Sumasayaw.
Hindi.
Ano?
Isa pa! Isa pa ang Chicken Joy! Isa pa! Isa pa!
Sa bukid walang papel, uy, ikis-kis mo sa pilapil, uy! Buti na lang, may New Joy Pop-Up. Madaling gamitin, convenient bitbitin. Kaya kahit kailan, kahit saan, handa ka. Joy Pop-Up, Pop-Up lambot sa presyong malambot.
Kailangan mag-aral mabuti kasi laging ako, puro na lang ako.
Collins?
Sa math, ako. Sa spelling, ako rin.
Mas pansin siya na mag-Tide with bleach. Dahil mas angat ang kaputi ang Tide, mas mukhang bago uli.
Ngayon, ako uli.
Kaya mo yan.
pa'y babangon ang
Sa tide, angat ka sa kabutian.
Itong bagong sinigang nyo? Magi sinigang sa miso.
Sarap, no?
Kakaiba eh.
Oh?
Parang may isang anghel sa aking labi na nakalutang sa ulap at nangingiliti. Kung ang alat o tasim ng buhay ay tulad ng hain ni inay, suspecha ko buong mundo'y magiging mapayapa at masaya.
New Maggi Sinigang sa Miso. Sige nga, i-describe mo.
Inflation likely slowed to 6.4% in November due to a slightly stronger peso and lower food and fuel prices. An analyst said Tuesday on the eve of the release of official data. John Mark Saking has the news.
Good day. The consumer price index will also likely ease back to the government's 2 to 4% target by the end of 2019, said the Standard Chartered Asia economist Chido Narayanan. All factors that were pushing inflation up this year have likely abated, leading to lower inflation, Narayanan told ANC's Market Edge. Inflation steadied at 6.7% in September and October after holding at near 10-year heights, and government economics managers predict a tapering off towards at the end of 2018. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Department of Economic Research expects inflation to settle between the 5.8 to 6.6% range in November. Narayanan said the BSP could hike interest rates one more time this year despite easing inflation. This is Margan B. Saking from BBW News reporting. Back to studio.
President Rodrigo Duterte has heeded his economic managers' advice to proceed with the imposition of the second round of increases in the excise taxes of petroleum products in 2019. John Angel Silverio for the reporting.
Good day. Duterte approved the proposal during the cabinet meeting in Malacanang on Tuesday. Budget Secretary Benjamin Dioco said, "The President and the Cabinet approved the implementation of the law. At its peak, diesel price was 48.80 pesos per liter. It will be 37.76 pesos per liter in January 2019, exclusive of 2 pesos excess tax. For gasoline, 95 octane, it was 60.90 pesos at its peak. It will be 50.82 in January 2019, exclusive of the 2 pesos additional excess tax," he added. Malacanang confirmed that Duterte approved the economic team recommendation. On November 29, the economic manager took back their earlier recommendation to suspend the second touch of fuel excise tax increase under the Republic Act 1096-3 or the tax reform for acceleration in the inclusion train law. The train law imposed a 2.50 pesos per liter excess tax on diesel from zero to hike the levy on gasoline to 7 pesos per liter. The law also provides that starting 2019, excess tax for diesel will be hiked by the total of 4.50 pesos and those gasoline by 9 pesos under the second tranche. The increase, however, could temporarily suspended should the average price in Dubai crude reach to exceed the average of $80 per barrel for the month prior to inflation of the next round of tax hikes. This is John Angelo Silverio from VVW News reporting. Back to studio.
Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas will stay vigilant to keep inflation under control even as price spikes slowed for the first time this year in November. Governor Nestor Espinolia said Wednesday. Mary has the news.
Good day. The 6% print in November from 6.7% in the previous 2 months is very encouraging and points to inflation heading back to the BSP's 2 to 4% target, as Penilla said in a statement. Monetary policy will need to stay vigilant to keep inflation under firm control amid expected strong economic growth, he said. Penilla credited strong monetary action for the slowdown in inflation, but the more direct impact on economic activity will take a longer time to take hold, he said. The BSP hiked the henchback borrowing rate by a cumulative 1.75 percentage points this year in the face of rising prices. During its last policy meeting earlier this month, it lowered its inflation forecast for 2019. This is Mary Lourdes Herman from VBW News reporting. Back to studio.
Senate Minority Leader Franklin Dillon warned the Philippine direct investment and employment would be in jeopardy if the second package of the trade law pushes through. Here are the details from Mark John.
Good day everyone. According to Drilon, at least 1,200 companies are poised to leave the country while a good number of investors have expressed apprehension about investing in the Philippines if fiscal incentives are removed under the government's proposed second package of tax reforms. The minority chief made the revelation during the interpellation of the budget of the Department of Trade and Industry late Tuesday. At least 1,200 enterprises might leave the country due to a sudden shift in the policy, which would cut the incentives given to foreign investors, Drilon said. Drilon likewise urged the DTI to adopt measures to improve the export industry. Citing its contribution to the country's gross international receipts, noting the Philippines has a poor performance in the export industry and is lagging behind its Southeast Asian neighbors. In 2017, the export in Singapore was at a staggering $373 billion, Indonesia at $169 billion, Thailand at $237 billion, Malaysia at $218 billion, and Vietnam at $215 billion. The Philippine exports failed in the comparison at $69 billion. We are kulelat. We are sixth in terms of export performance in Southeast Asia, and we are even overtaken by Vietnam, Drilon said. We are lagging behind and we are not improving at all, notwithstanding all the programs that we have, he noted. This is Mark Jan Bisaking from BBW News reporting. Back to studio.
Speaker Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo on Wednesday cheered the drop in the inflation rate to 6% in November from high to 6.7% in October. Jello for the reporting.
Good day. Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo during the opening of the third regular session of Congress on Monday. Well, I'm very happy to hear about ceasing inflation, she told reporter in an ambush interview. She said the government should flex its muscle to address the root of cause of inflation. She said that increasing the supply of the basic commodities is among of the measure to address inflation. I guess the moral of this story is when there's a supply side inflation, when we increase the supply, but we should do it as soon as we detect the supply side inflation, Arroyo said. But Gabriela Representative Arlene Brosas said the inflation rate slowdown in November does not mean lower the price. She said it's not the cause of relief, as it's only temporary and does not mean lower prices of basic goods and services. Tandaan natin ang pagbaba ng inflation rate ay pagbagal lang ng pagtaas ng presyo ng mga bilihin at hindi automatic ang nahulugan ng pagbaba ng presyo mismo. Pansamantala lamang din ito dahil sinisipa muli ang inflation sa Enero sa pagpapatupad ng mas mataas na excise tax sa langis bunga ng train law. Brosas said, dapat na ipagdiwang sa pagbaba ng inflation rate kasi hindi bumabalik presyo ang mga bilihin sa antas bago ang implementasyon ng train law. Ang totoo, patuloy pa rin ang taas ng presyo sa mga bilihin pagpasok ng bagong taon. She added. Brosas said President Duterte, economic manager should not take the credit for the inflation rate slowdown, citing the drop in palm prices were mainly due to global market trends. The increase of lower prices also did not immediately translate to lower food prices and transportation costs. This is John Angelo Silverio from VVW News reporting back to studio. As the Philippine government continued to borrow heavily from domestic sources, its debt stock further rose to 7.17 trillion pesos in October. Here are the details from Mary Lourdes.
Good day. The national government's outstanding obligations at the end of the first 10 months inched up 0.1% from 7.16 trillion pesos as of September, as well as jumped 10.2% from 6.5 trillion pesos a year ago. Domestic debt, which accounted for the bulk or 64.5% of the total, rose 0.7% month-on-month and 9.6% year-on-year to 4.62 trillion pesos. In a statement, the Treasury attributed the month-on-month increase in locally sourced borrowings to the net issuance of government securities amounting to 32.74 billion pesos. To raise funds, the government sells treasury bills and bonds to domestic investors. The higher domestic debt was nonetheless slightly offset by the appreciation of the peso that it decreased the value of onshore dollar bonds by 290 million pesos, the Treasury said, noting that the currency strengthened to 53.527 against the US dollar in October from 54 to 102 $1 last September. Foreign debt, meanwhile, declined 0.9% month-on-month but climbed by a faster 11.5% year-on-year to 2.55 trillion pesos. We take great care that the funds we borrow are wisely used and produce sufficient economic benefits to make the debt service easier down the road. Let me reiterate, in the face of uninformed criticism, the distribution of administration is not about to allow the country to be drowned in debts to China. In all the financing agreements, we have made sure that the country got the best deals possible, and that the cardinal tenets of fiscal discipline are carefully observed. Financial Secretary Carlos G. Gomez III said last week. This is Mary Lourdes Herman from VBW News reporting. Back to studio.
8 foreigners and 24 Filipinos were arrested on Thursday during raids on 2 offices in Pasig City, where the suspects were allegedly operating a lucrative investment scam that victimized retirees and pensioners. May you please report the details, Angelo Silverio?
Good day. 2 Makati judges earlier issued search warrant for the rented office spaces in the Medical Plaza and Pacific Center building, both located at the San Miguel Avenue in the Ortigas area, due to alleged violation of the Securities Religion Code. The raids were conducted by a joint team composed of the Pasig City Police National Capital Region Police Office, NCRPO, Philippine National Police Anti-Cybercrime Group, Internet Fraud Watchdog, IFW, and the U.S. Department of Homeland Securities. 3 Americans, 3 British nationals, a Canadian, a Ghanaians, and 2
This is Mary Lourdes Herman from BBW News, reporting. Back to studio.
On Thursday. Seized from the offices were computers, modern routers, mobile phones, and documents. They would introduce themselves as a security firm that sold stocks, said NCRPO Chief Director Guillermo Lazar. Then after convincing the client to invest, they would disappear. He added that the arrested suspects operated like telemarketers, using persuasive script to dupe their victims into investing in the bogus stocks. The clients were often carefully picked by the suspect, who would score the internet and vulnerable retired and by pensioners. They would profile people, and once they had identified someone who could possibly deceive, they would call them. They were very used to it, Elzar said. The Australian-based IFW got in touch with the local authorities in August after several Australians fell victim to the scam. The U.S. Embassy had also coordinated with the NCRPO after several Americans were cheated, too, accordingly to Elzar. Asked why the traditional scheme by being operated from the Philippines, IFW Executive Chair Ken Gamble told reporters that there is a feeling they can get away within here. This is John Angelo Silverio from VVW News reporting. Back to studio.
The rate of increase in prices of basic commodities among poor families remained at almost 5-year high of 9.5 year-on-year in October, even as food inflation is slightly eased that month. The government reported Friday. Mary has the news.
Good day. The Philippine Statistics Authority Consumer Price Index or CPI for bottom 30% income households report for October showed that the year-on-year rate matched September's similar 9.5%, the highest since 2014, based on 2000 prices. The PSA said prices of services, clothing, and miscellaneous goods rose 3.5%, 2.9%, and 2.2% respectively, all faster than a month ago. However, price increases in food, beverages, and tobacco slowed to 10.7% in October against 10.8% in September. While those for fuel, light, and water also eased to 9.8% from 10%, the PSA said. Also, the food index saw a slightly slower 9.8% increase from 9.9% in September. Relative to their annual rates in the previous month, annual add-ons in October were slower in the indices of corn at 5.6%, fruits and vegetables 14.2%, and meat 7.1%. The PSA explained. At the end of the first 10 months, inflation for the bottom 30% household averaged 7%. Nationwide headline inflation was a lower 6.7% year-on-year in October, although the rate was an over 9-year high based on 2012 prices. Poor families outside Metro Manila explained a similar 9.5% hike in average prices last October, similar to the rate in September. Poor households in Metro Manila, meanwhile, experienced a slower average price increase of 6.9% that month from September's 8.1%. This has been the reason why labor groups insisted that the slowdown in inflation should not be a cause for celebration for the administration, as the poor could hardly afford basic commodities. For the working poor is straining to keep their families from starving, it does not mean much, said Centro Secretary General Joshua Mata. Prices of basic goods and services rose to 6% in November, down from 6.7% in September and October, amid slower price increases in food and utilities, according to the Philippine Statistic Authorities. Mata said the government should remember that the figure was still way above its higher estimate of a 4% inflation this year. Transport groups also found little reason to relax amid the recent rollback of fares for jeepneys and President Duterte's decision to push through while the second round of increase in the excise on fuel next month. Economic managers see the decline as optimistic, but the figures don't add up for jeepney drivers still struggling to make ends meet, said Piston Chair George San Mateo. The lower inflation rate is no use to us, San Mateo said. With the looming 2.45 pesos additional excise on diesel starting January 2019, drivers would suffer an additional loss of 80 pesos a day. San Mateo was referring to the fuel tax hike approved by Mr. Duterte last week.
The Department of Education on Saturday clarified its amended Christmas break for teachers, saying they may be required to report for work from December 16 to 22. Mary Lourdes has the news.
Good day. Teachers may still be required to report and render services from December 16 to 22 in the exigency of public service. The department said in a statement, this was after DepEd issued a Memorandum DepEd Order Number 49 Series of 2018 or amendments to DepEd Order Number 25 Series 2018. Stating that teachers in elementary and secondary public schools nationwide may begin their Christmas vacation on December 16. This is Mary Lourdes Herman from BBW News, reporting. Back to studio.
Almost all of the 3.767 trillion peso 2018 national budget have been handed over the government agencies they were allotted to. According to the latest data from the Department of Budget and Management, here are the details from John Patrick Angelo Silverio.
Good day. In a statement, the DB reported that has already released 3.633 trillion pesos of the 2018 budget as of November 30. Beside continuing appropriation from the Republic Act 1092-4 or the General Appropriation Act for the fiscal year 2017, amounting to 3.5 billion pesos and program appropriation worth 12.32 billion pesos were also included in the additional release, the BM said in the statement. This unprogrammed appropriation includes fund to support foreign assisted project, fund in support the infrastructure and the social program, and general fund adjustment. Automatic appropriation worth 3.89 billion pesos were also a part of release fund which were used for the modernization of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, AFP, grants, donation, and other purposes. In the separate statement, the DBM noted that spending in October this year was more than what was spent last year. The government spent 306.6 billion pesos in October, 79.8 billion pesos or 35.2% more than what it spent for the same month last year, driven by the administration aggressive infrastructure program. This is John Angelo Silverio from VVW News reporting back to studio.
That's the end of today's news, and we hope you become aware of the phenomenon issues in the Philippines. Once again, I am Eliza Joy Labii.
And I'm Marcel Celestino.
And this is the VBW News.